Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamison Gosselin. I am Chief Marketing Officer here at Eclipse Senior Living, which operates the Elmcroft communities across the country. Thank you very much for joining our webcast today, 5+ things to know about the COVID-19 vaccine in senior living. A few administrative items before we begin today's call. There are some functionality things to be aware of. One is you should be seeing the slides up on the screen as our panelists are talking today, as well as a brief little video of us talking. Hopefully you're hearing us on the audio front. And then asking a question. We've had a couple functional issues with the asking a question piece of it, but we did get some questions earlier today from a group of folks, and so we are going to address those. If you do wish to ask a question and have the panelists answer it, you can respond within the original invitation, and we would be more than happy to respond to those. Also, after this live webcast, we will be producing a recorded version of the webcast that we will be posting online, and also being able to address some of the questions that we get through this webcast. So with that piece of it, let's go on, move forward, and introduce our panelists today. So our first panelist is Sharon Roth Maguire. She is our Senior Vice President of Wellness, Care, and Quality here at Eclipse Senior Living. Also joining us is Shamim Wu, our Chief Operating Officer here at Eclipse Senior Living. What's more, Dr. Jay Fathi is joining us as well. He is our healthcare consultant here at Eclipse Senior Living and working with us since the very beginning of the pandemic. Another housekeeping item for us to cover today is the legal stuff. And so our information that we are sharing in today's presentation shall not be construed as and is not intended to be medical, clinical, or regulatory advice. All content, text, graphics, materials, and information contained in or available in the presentation is for general informational purposes only. The presentation is not meant to be complete or exhaustive and is not intended to establish a standard of care. Please consult your medical professional if you need medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your medical professional or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions that you may have regarding a medical condition or concern. Participation in this program, including the Q&A session, does not establish a doctor-patient or provider-resident relationship. The mention of a specific company or manufacturer's product does not imply that they are endorsed, promoted, or recommended by a speaker in preference to others. Okay, onward we go. So clearly, in today's session, we want to cover some of the highlights around the COVID-19 vaccination and senior living communities. And, I'd first like to introduce Shamim Wu, our Chief Operating Officer. Shamim, we know that the vaccine has gone through some twists and turns when we first started hearing about it in the early fall. But can you give us a quick update on the current state of the COVID-19 vaccine as it stands today?
Sure. Thanks, Jamison, for prompting that question, and welcome everybody to our Empower Hour webcast. So the current state of the COVID-19 vaccine is that there are at this time 2 approved vaccines that are being distributed and administered in the United States. There's the Pfizer vaccine, and then there's the Moderna vaccine, and they both have very similar efficacy rates, and they also have similar time in between the 2 doses. There are other vaccines that are currently going through the approval process. And so as those are approved and if they are authorized to be administered, we would of course do that in conjunction with the HHS Pharmacy Partnership Program. The federal government is currently recommending that all seniors aged 65 and over are on the priority list. And so that means that they are ready to receive and should be receiving a dose. This includes residents and associates in long-term care settings, which range from skilled nursing to assisted living and memory care. And currently, we have over 87% of our Elmcroft communities that have already hosted or have their first clinic scheduled. In a little bit, we'll talk about why there are still a few communities that have yet to schedule their date, although we do have more communities getting scheduled every single day. But we'll talk you through some of those details a little bit later in the webcast.
Great, thanks, Shamim. One of the things that we've been hearing in a lot of our communities has been around, should I take the vaccine? why should I take the vaccine? What's the benefits of the vaccine? And so we wanted to talk through some of the 5 key benefits that we've been hearing in reputable information around the vaccine, but also talk through what we've been hearing from our own residents and their families as well as it relates to the vaccine. So the first one that we've been hearing is it's free and it's available at no cost. Shamim, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I would love to, because this is the one that I'm probably the most passionate about getting education around. And if there's one key thing that everybody takes away from the webcast today, it is that there are no out-of-pocket costs for our residents or any individual in our country to get vaccinated to get vaccinated for COVID-19. The federal government has committed, and they committed very early on in the pandemic, that they would absorb all costs related to administering the vaccine to and it being delivered to individuals. And so I want to reiterate that it is at zero, absolutely no cost for individuals to get vaccinated.
Thank you, Shamim. And then the next one, that it's tested. Dr. J, do you want to talk a little bit about the fact that this vaccine has gone through quite a bit of testing?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jamison. And it's great to be speaking with you all today. Thanks for tuning into us. When you look at the top of this slide, what are the benefits of the COVID-19 vaccine? Hopefully, we don't have to convince too many people what those benefits are. The COVID-19 vaccine is going to expedite and accelerate the end of the pandemic, period. We just need people to get it, and we need people to get it as soon as they can. This is great news. COVID is now a vaccine preventable disease, which is music to the ears of doctors and nurses. So this has been tested. It was tested, both of the vaccines that are now approved were tested in tens of thousands of people over many, many, many months. And you're looking at someone who's already gotten 1 dose of the vaccine. The way it works is it's just like getting a flu shot for the most part. You get a little poke in the arm and that's it. Your arm might be a little bit sore. You do need to get 2 shots for it to work, and they're separated by either 3 or 4 weeks, depending on what type it is. After the second shot, particularly, some people will have side effects, which happens with other vaccines, and that's totally normal. People can feel the next day a little crummy, a little bit of a low-grade fever, achy, but that goes away in just about everybody after a day or 2. And things like ibuprofen or Tylenol or acetaminophen can help with that. It has been tested, and it has a 90 to 95% chance of cutting your risk of catching COVID. So right now, considering what we're going through around the world and in our country and in all of our communities within our country, we really, really want to reassure people that it has been tested. And as you can see, there's already millions of people that have gotten the vaccine, which is great news.
And we've also, been hearing that it's safe. And, we know that it's gone through rigorous review by, a variety of government bodies, both here in the United States and overseas. Do you want to talk a little bit about the review that it's gone through in terms of our federal government agencies and all the people looking at it?
Right, for sure. I'll tell you, Jamison, in my career, which is 25 plus years, there's been many, many, many new vaccines that have been introduced in the United States of America. There's a process for it. And these vaccines for COVID-19 went through the exact same process. People are they've never paid attention to the process before. They've just said, oh, there's a new vaccine for shingles, for example, those over 50. They don't question it. There's a lot of people that are, all eyes are focused on COVID-19 right now, so people are paying attention. Those processes were followed just like they have been for every vaccine that has been approved in the last several decades in the United States. There are several bodies that approve what the pharmaceutical companies produce to make sure that it is indeed safe. And they are indeed effective. There are organizations like the CDC. There's a committee called the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices that has been around for ages. I've known people that have served on that committee. Their job is to make sure that these shots are safe for ourselves, our kids, our grandkids, our husbands and wives. There's been no funny business here. The reason it was sped up a little bit is because there's some administrative and bureaucratic steps that were removed because we're in the middle of a global pandemic. There was global cooperation between countries. The government regulators in the United States said, let's try to get out of the way and not do things that don't add value. But the safety and efficacy has been rigorously studied, and this vaccine is just as safe as every other vaccine that's been approved. And again, I've got it, and I'm encouraging my patients, my family members to get it too.
Yeah, and Sharon, the other thing, clearly because it's tested, it's safe, and it's available at no cost to folks, it's becoming more popular. And since, New Year's, we're seeing an acceleration of people participating in the vaccine opportunity. Do you want to talk a little bit about its popularity?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And hello, everybody. Nice to be with you. And I join the others in thanking you for joining us today. So it is popular, and in some instances, it's caused long lines at various in various states and in various counties to, wait for the vaccine. And really, people are eager to get this protection to prevent this, horrific illness we've all been struggling with over the last many months now. So we know that here in the United States, there's over 11 million Americans that have received their first dose, and worldwide, there's close to 30 million now who've been vaccinated. So it certainly is popular, and I think that just speaks to people's desire to eradicate this disease. So I'm really glad that it's popular, and we're really grateful that within our senior living communities, we've been designated as part of what's known as Phase 1A. It's been mentioned before, but there is a national strategy around targeting the highest risk populations first. And truly, we are grateful that our residents within assisted living have been a part of that, not only because of the nature of their community living experience, but also because of their age and their comorbidities. So between that and our direct care staff, who are also identified as a high-risk group, it is a very popular vaccine, one that's really been looked forward to by so many of us.
Yeah, and Sharon, as it relates to that popularity, seniors in general, if you think about their lifetime, they have had access to numerous new vaccines, right? So polio,
right,
mumps, rubella, even the flu shot was new for them, correct?
That's right, and that's kind of exciting. I mean, I'm a little bit unusual perhaps that way, being in healthcare as long as I have been. I'm a geriatric nurse practitioner, but I, in my own lifetime, have witnessed the benefit of new vaccines. For example, polio you mentioned, and then numerous other vaccines that are available. So how exciting, for older adults now to be part of this new generation of vaccines that, as Jay commented on, have been deeply studied, found to be very safe and highly efficacious. And truly, it's a remarkable event in our world that we can all take part in this truly significant effort and historic effort to, again, eradicate this terrible disease.
Yeah, and Sharon, the other thing is, and we find that we are really trying to, we know there are people out there who can't take the vaccine, whether for religious reasons or for certain personal health reasons. So that's why it's so critically important for people to take the vaccine if they can take the vaccine, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And, we would strongly encourage everyone to get this vaccine. Again, the safety has been studied deeply, and most people should be able to get inoculated. And that is critical in terms of, I'm sure many of you have heard this concept of herd immunity. So the more people that get vaccinated, the more of us will be protected. And of course, again, there have been times in our history, both at the national level and at the worldwide level, that we've been able to eradicate certain diseases through vaccination. Smallpox is a great example. And so those efforts, though, depend on high levels of participation, because vaccines do save lives. And so it not only protects you, but your loved ones and the greater community. And again, my healthcare background really always makes me mindful of the greater good. And so that we have the opportunity here to make a difference, not only in our own lives and the lives of our immediate family, but the lives of our fellow citizens here in the United States and frankly around the world. So I cannot underscore enough the importance of all of us getting vaccinated.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're
So
welcome.
Shamim, a lot of our first clinics launched on December 23rd, right before Christmas, 22nd and 23rd, right before Christmas. Some of our first communities started to receive the vaccine and host clinics in conjunction with our federal pharmacy partners who actually have access to the vaccine and bring the vaccine to our communities to serve our residents and our associates. Do you want to talk a little bit about the vaccination clinics in the communities and how they work and how they operate?
Sure, I would love to. So each Elmcroft community is currently set up to host 3 vaccination clinics, and that is how the pharmacy partnership was set up through the HHS department. And so most communities will have 3 one-time clinics. For some of our communities that are set on larger campuses and serve a larger resident population, they might have multiple days for clinics. So that way we can safely and quickly, as quickly as safely as possible, get through our entire resident and associate populations. It is designed to have 3 clinics so that everybody can get at least 2 doses. Then through the HHS Pharmacy Partnership Program, each community is partnered with a very local location. So it may be CVS, it may be Walgreens, or it may be another pharmacy that the state government has partnered with and approved to use as part of this pharmacy partnership program. Then from there, we're tracking symptoms and vaccine schedules. We're participating in the vSafe app, the VAERS app, so that any type of side effects or adverse reactions can be tracked by local public health departments and the federal government. And then, of course, most importantly, we're continuing safety protocols, even post our vaccine clinics per CDC guidelines. Now, what we've seen is, we're grateful that we've seen an overwhelming majority of our residents choosing to take the vaccine. And so, seeing that is really encouraging and inspiring for the rest of the population around the country, that those who are most vulnerable to the disease are stepping up and taking their shot to get themselves protected and the ones that they love protected. So Sharon might want to talk about, I did mention in the last bullet here what type of safety protocol that we would be continuing safety protocols. And Sharon, you might want to talk about what safety protocols we are continuing with until the CDC tells us differently.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And even though the vaccine has great efficacy, we do know that it does take some time to develop full immunity. And as Shamim mentioned, both of these currently available vaccinations have a second vaccine that's required, a booster, if you will. And so it does take some time for individuals to develop immunity. And of course, as I mentioned before, this concept of herd immunity. So our efforts to continue with our safety protocols as guided by the national direction from the CDC will remain in place. And that's very important for all of us to be mindful of that. Even, if you're living in your own home and, have been vaccinated and you're going out and about, you still want to maintain those safety protocols. So for example, in our communities and all of you who are, ever going outside of your own home, you continue to need to mask, right? So wearing a mask is critically important. Maintaining that physical distance, avoiding large groups, and any number of other things that you've done to continue to be healthy, washing your hands, avoid touching your face, things of that nature. So these safety protocols will absolutely remain in place. We're also at our senior living communities going to continue to do screening of guests that are allowed in and screening of our own staff. Because again, until we reach a critical mass and until we are given guidance at the national level that it's okay to reduce these safety protocols, we still need to be vigilant.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Shamim, one of the questions we've often been getting from residents and their families and a host of other people is, what took so long for us to start the vaccination clinic? So we thought it would be good to kind of explain how the timeline worked when the vaccines were finally approved for use, and just all the various things all the components that came into play in order to be able to even offer a vaccination clinic in the communities. Do you want to talk a little bit about, why we were slow to go, like almost everyone was in the country, in terms of trying to get access to the vaccine?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point, Jamison, and that is that, and we've mentioned it before earlier in this webcast, that this is a historic time where we have millions of people experiencing the same thing for the first time at the same time. And so it is to everyone's credit and no one person's fault why the initial rollout has been slow. But we thought it would be beneficial for the audience for us to just very quickly first walk through a timeline of when we really began mobilizing around vaccine distribution. So back in early to mid-November, prior to Thanksgiving, we knew that there was a lot of mobilization with the HHS pharmacy program. And it was around that time that companies such as ours got an opportunity to initially register and express interest for the vaccine to be delivered and administered at our communities. And so that began before Thanksgiving, and was complete. The initial data entry for that registration was completed by Thanksgiving. Then in early December, everybody was developing materials, both the CDC, the FDA, everybody was developing materials around training and education and how to best deliver this vaccine. Then in early December, the US FDA approved or gave emergency use authorization for the first vaccine, which was the Pfizer vaccine. Then a week later, they gave emergency use authorization for the Moderna vaccine. And then, as Jamison, as you mentioned, our first clinics began at our Elmcroft communities shortly before Christmas. So December 22nd was actually when we had our first clinic. Now, along the way, I would say that there are some big buckets of things that happened. So first and foremost, a variety of logistics had to be involved once the EUA was issued. So travel of the vaccine to distribution centers, then onto pharmacies, then onto local locations, ensuring that the proper temperature, that the vaccines were being stored at the proper temperature. Some of the vaccines required deeper freezing temperatures than some others, and so making accommodations for that and ensuring that the cold chain was not broken to ultimately compromise the vaccines. So lots of logistics had to be involved. Then the holidays arrived, and we know that the holidays typically things very naturally get slowed down because people are trying to take a little bit of time with their families. Retail and offices are closed, and so the holidays created kind of another brief slowdown. Then once the authorizations really started to happen and everybody was mobilizing around delivery, there was a period of time where the government had to coordinate. And what I mean by that is, I think the state and local governments were trying to discern what they were responsible for versus what the federal government was responsible for. And so figuring that out, kind of like a who's on first, who's responsible for what at what time, and the states then determining exactly who was going to be in their first initial phase based on HHS and CDC guidance, and finalizing who was going to be in the priority group. That all took a little bit of time to be worked out, and I think ultimately created some delay in the rollout. And so I would say that those were probably 3 of the 4 big reasons why the initial rollout slowed over, the past, call it 8 weeks. But I think myths and some misinformation are also a reason why the initial rollout has slowed. And so I'd love to pass the mic over to Sharon to talk a little bit about that.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And if I can just also add to some of the description that you gave, Shamim, which was excellent, it's really been an enormous undertaking, right? The likes of which none of us have ever seen, including the federal government. And so I'm not here to pass judgment, but it was incredibly complex, and the communication that was required amongst many different key stakeholders, frankly, was perhaps not as smooth as it might have been or could have been, but who knows? Because again, this has never been done before at this level. And so I have to commend different individuals on this call and others who are not on this call from within our company, and also leaders within the senior living space for really trying their very best to advocate for clarity of communication and coordination. And so we sat, myself, and I know Shamim, you did, and others, on numerous calls with numerous governmental agencies, state agencies, pharmacy companies, to really try to coordinate this. And it was, I'll just be honest, it was not easy. And so, but we were determined to make it happen. We were determined to be at the front of the line. And I truly could not be more proud of the fact that within Elmcroft, we had one of the earliest and one of the first flu vaccine clinics at our communities in West Virginia. And that was truly a proud moment to get started. So while you described it beautifully and it sounded easier than I think it was, I wanted to give a little sort of just real life background about how hard it really has been. Again, not to offer any criticism of it, but just the fact that truly this has never been done before on this scale. So now, myths and misinformation, how did that impact the rollout? I think in terms of people being willing to accept vaccination, unfortunately, there's a lot of myths in various media. And what I'm speaking about is not legitimate media sources, but our favorite internet, right? With all of these social media sites who are really not relying on evidence-based information, true science about the vaccine, but rather spreading myths and misinformation. And so no doubt that has interfered in terms of acceptance of the vaccine. And really, it's a really sad day when reliable science is dismissed. And as Jay mentioned earlier, the truly detailed studies that were done on these vaccines really have tight and sound science to support the data that is factual about these vaccines. And so these myths and misinformation, it's been anything and everything to, oh, there's a microchip implanted in the vaccines, which is so farcical. And I know Jay probably has a comment about that, that you're going to get COVID if you get vaccinated. That's not true at all. The way this vaccine works is very different from vaccines some of us may be very familiar with that actually provide a live or an attenuated form of the virus, for example, influenza, or there's a number of other examples. This vaccine is not like that. It works in a very different way. And so people sort of took hold of these various myths and misinformation, and it's contributed in some instances to some individuals, delaying vaccination, which again is unfortunate and completely unfounded.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome.
And Dr. J, did you want, I know there are a few other things potentially in the myths that really spark some passion in you too.
Well, I think all I'd say is, I almost don't like to repeat the things that you hear to give them any credibility. As Sharon alluded to, don't rely on random things on the internet or social media for your information, for your healthcare in general, let alone for something as important as this. Rely on trusted sources like the Centers for Disease Control, your state health department, wherever you are, your county health department, wherever you are. Every county in the United States has a county health officer. who lives in your county, whose job it is to synthesize this information and make recommendations for the best thing for both your individual health and the community's health, the public health. This is a no-brainer. This is being recommended by every health agency and health department in the country. You know, for me, it's entertaining to hear about some of the things that people say, and some of the stuff is borderline, like, I don't know where they get it. Like Sharon used the term farcical. So make sure you use credible news sources for your information, including your own doctor.
Thank you. Sharon, I know especially you and Shamim have been really in tight conversation and communication with each of our communities, especially those that have recently had clinics and had great success. And you know, you were sharing earlier that they are basically making them into celebratory opportunities to showcase, you know, and basically, you know, represent that this is the start of the end of the pandemic, which I think we're all looking forward to. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the sentiment in our communities right now?
Absolutely. It's really a moment of excitement and celebration. And on the slide here, you can see some of the comments from some of our residents. They are eager to get vaccinated, and our executive directors have really done an amazing job of creating a lot of enthusiasm around the vaccination clinics with special posters, special themes, having a lot of fun, taking photos of folks getting vaccinated. One of my favorite photos is an older adult gentleman in one of our communities sort of like going, yes, more power, you know, to the people, kind of a thing. So proud and so happy to have been vaccinated. One of our communities had just recently crush COVID as their theme, and they used cans of Orange Crush soda and orange themes to kind of promote the spirit of we're all in this together. We're going to get rid of this nasty illness. We're going to crush COVID. So folks are really championing this, and our seniors are truly celebrating this day to be able to get this vaccine. They're looking forward to getting it. Some of these quotes just touch my heart. I'm willing to do what's best for everybody. I'm happy to protect, you know, my family. And one that really sort of choked me up a little bit. I know what it's like when there are no vaccines. You know, this sense before the vaccine of hopelessness almost, right? So the fact now that there is some hope is really significant. And so I would say our residents, along with our teams at our communities, are really celebrating this and having a bit of fun with it too.
That's great, thank you. So let's turn over now to some of the questions that we got in before we started having some issues with our Q&A functionality. And this is a question we've been hearing a lot from folks, Shamim. You know, will you mandate the vaccine and require it of people?
Yeah, so definitely a top of mind question for everybody. It's one of the most frequent questions that I personally get asked. And here's what I will say. You know, whether or not so a mandate is something that we are considering. We're continuing to evaluate it and have conversation around it almost on a daily basis. What are the benefits and the challenges of issuing a mandate? But here's what I've been saying really back since November to everybody on our team. And that is a mandate. It shouldn't have to take a mandate for us to want to protect ourselves and our loved ones and the population that we serve. And so for all the reasons that we as individuals have chosen to work in this industry and to care for the seniors and the residents that we love so much, those should be all the reasons that compel us to take the vaccine of our own accord. And so the most important thing that we can all do as individuals is to educate and inform ourselves so that we can make the right decision that makes sense for us. And so a mandate becomes irrelevant. Like it's it's neither here nor there when everybody's driving towards the same mission. And because we know that there is a percentage of the population that cannot get vaccinated, either because of sincerely held religious beliefs or some sort of a medical condition, it's even more important that everybody else gets vaccinated so that we can reach that 70 to 80% herd immunity that the CDC and the FDA and all the medical experts around the country have been talking about.
Thank you, Shamim. I think this next question that we got is also probably best suited to be answered by you. Will your communities offer the vaccine to people other than residents and your associates?
Regrettably, no. At this time, and there has been a lot of clarity around the fact that as part of being in phase 1A, which is quite a privilege, it is our residents and our associates that are prioritized to get the vaccine at this time. And so we are not allowing family members of associates or anybody else that may be peripherally affiliated with the community to get the vaccine. It's only open to residents who live with us, which includes people who stay with us for a respite or a trial stay, and all associates who work with us as well.
Thank you. The next question, Dr. J, I'm going to have you field this one because it's very vaccine specific. Should I wait for the vaccines that are coming out later that only require one shot? And then there was another one similar to it, which was Pfizer or Moderna. Which one should I take?
Those are great questions. The first one, the short answer is, should you wait? No, absolutely not. And the second question, which one should I pick out of the first two? It doesn't matter. So to go into a little bit more depth, we don't know what the future holds. We know we have two that have been approved for safety and efficacy in the United States, and they look like they're going to work, and millions of people are getting them. The future, there will be better. If you look at other vaccines, the first one that comes out, generally that company or another company a year or two later comes out with a better version. It causes less side effects and is even more effective at preventing the vaccine. These are scientists that work for companies. They're constantly trying to improve their products. So I'm very confident we're going to have more vaccines released and approved around the world. And hopefully one that's just one instead of having to get two. It's just easier, works hopefully quicker, and hopefully that's going to happen. But right now, there's too much at stake. This virus is everywhere right now, and it's risky to leave your house. So I say to anyone, do not wait. You have an option to get the vaccine, which hopefully, depending on where you live, soon that's going to happen to everyone over 65, get the vaccine. And to just a little bit more on as far as which one, probably the most credible thing I can tell you is when I went to get to my hospital as a doctor there, I didn't care. They just said, you're getting whichever one. It was Moderna. Great. Here it is. Please, I want the vaccine. My wife, who works at a different medical center, got the other one. It doesn't matter at this point. Again, over time in the future years, because this might need to be something that we need to get every year, like a flu shot, there'll be improvements. But right now, with everything that's at stake, I would not wait, and I would get whichever one was available.
Thank you. Sharon, this next question is definitely for you, and I think it's coming from a resident. How long are we gonna have to wear masks in the community?
Yeah, I know it's not a favorite thing, but again, I want to just reiterate that it's super important that we keep these restrictions in place in terms of safety. And so until we reach a critical mass of everyone being vaccinated, and until we get guidance from respected authorities like the Centers for Disease Control, we're going to keep that mandate in effect.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome.
James, if I could just add really quick, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Dr. J.
Repeat a quote from Dr. Fauci on this one, because I think it's very, very appropriate. When you're in a battle and you're losing the battle and the cavalry comes over the hill and the cavalry arrives behind you, you don't stop fighting. I thought that was a great analogy. We have to, it's going to take time for the vaccine, for enough people to get vaccinated, and for it to start really suppressing the amount of virus that's so prevalent right now. But that time is going to come, and the time will come that we will need to wear masks much, much less, hopefully not at all. But as Sharon said, we can't stop right now. That would be a step backwards.
Great.
You know, it makes me also think of another question sort of related to this topic of vaccination and safety. One of the questions we often get is around people who've had COVID. You know, should they get vaccinated? And the guidance to that is yes, they should, because we know that having COVID does provide some natural immunity, but you still should get vaccinated, right? We don't know how long that natural immunity lasts, and there's no contraindication. There's no science that says if you've had COVID, you should not get it. As a matter of fact, it's the exact opposite. So again, you know, get vaccinated. It doesn't matter which vaccine. If you've had COVID, it's okay. You can get vaccinated. The only guidance here would be you should wait until you are no longer in isolation from your COVID diagnosis and you are asymptomatic. You no longer have symptoms. The CDC further suggests you may, if you choose, wait up to 90 days from your initial diagnosis, but you do not have to wait that long. And again, we're not here to be your prescribers, your physicians or nurse practitioners. You certainly should seek guidance from your own medical team, but I wanted you to be aware that, again, in an effort to get as many people vaccinated as possible, that having had COVID does not prevent you from getting vaccinated.
Thank you,
And
Sharon.
I would just quickly add, excuse me, Jamison, to what Sharon said. This is a very, very nasty, aggressive virus, and it is definitely true that some people have got COVID twice. It's rare, but it happens. It's no longer a theory. You can get COVID twice. So yes, absolutely. Exactly what Sharon said. If you've had it before, you still should absolutely get the vaccine.
Great. All right. Well, I want to thank our panelists for participating in today's webcast. I think there was some really good information within this webcast that hopefully our folks found value in. For the attendees of this call, we will also be making a recording of this call available early next week, as well as some additional information that you can consult back to. If you go to eclipseseniorliving.com/COVID vaccine or elmcroft.com/empower, you will find all that information there. So again, thank you for joining our webcast and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.